No text, no call, nothing. And yet, that nothing is everything. It isn't absence it, as presence in disguise. The kind of presence that does comfort but unsettles, the kind that gnaws at the mind until it becomes unbearable. Silence is not neutral. Silence is not weak. Silence is the sharpest blade you could ever hold. It cuts without leaving a visible wound. It speaks without a single word. And it leaves an imprint that no apology or explanation could erase. Think about it. In a world drowning in constant noise, notifications, pings, texts, calls, silence becomes deafening. Every second without a reply feels heavier. Every minute without a message stretches into an eternity. The mind doesn't stay still. It races. It starts asking questions it doesn't want answers to. Did something go wrong? Did something change? Was everything just an illusion? The absence of words forces thoughts to multiply, and thoughts are crueler than the truth. What you don't realize is this. Silence has weight. It carries meaning even when you don't intend it to. It can signal strength, indifference, finality, or power. And when it lands hard. It doesn't need punctuation. It doesn't need delivery. It is the delivery. Silence keeps echoing long after it begins. A text can be read and forgotten. A call can be dismissed. But silence doesn't go away. Silence grows louder with time. The haunting nature of silence is this: it takes control. It takes control of the other person's mind, their emotions, their peace. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifts. The one who waits becomes restless, and the one who withholds becomes dominant. It's not manipulation, it is reality. Attention is a drug, and withdrawal hurts. The addict does crave what they already have. They crave what they can get. And silence is pure scarcity. Most people are terrified of silence because they think it means being forgotten. They rush to fill the void with words, with calls, with explanations, with endless noise that only proves their fear. But those who understand silence know it is not emptiness, it is clarity. It reveals the truth about where someone stands. If they crumble in your silence, if they drown in the absence of your voice, it exposes their dependence on you. And if they can ignore it, if they move on unaffected, it shows you where you truly stand in their life. Either way, silence gives the answer. This is the brutal truth. Silence haunts because it removes certainty. Certainty is comfort. Certainty is control. And when you strip it away, you create chaos. That chaos does come from cruelty. It comes from restraint. You don't feed the need for attention. You don't provide the validation. You don't soothe the insecurity. You let silence speak for you. And silence speaks louder than you ever could. The absence of a text is to just absence it. Its presence magnified. It's every unspoken thought, every hidden feeling, every unanswered question, all rolled into one. It is the loudest kind of communication because it does end when the words stop. It keeps echoing, repeating, gnawing. Silence never dies quickly. It lingers like smoke in the air, choking everything around it, refusing to be ignored. So understand this. No text, no call, no sound is not weakness. It is not neglect. It is not avoidance. It is the unshakable reminder that sometimes the most powerful statement is made when nothing is said at all. And when that silence falls, it will haunt her far more than your words ever could. When you pull away, when your phone stays dark, when hours turn into days without a single word, something shifts inside her world. That silence does to just feel like space. It feels like a judgment. It's not simply you being unavailable. It's you sending a message without speaking. Every second without a call becomes a reminder that you are not chasing, not proving, not begging. And that unsettles her more than you realize. Because here is the truth. People expect consistency. They expect pattern. They expect you to be there because you always have been. They expect your words, your attention, your validation to flow without interruption. But when that flow stops, the ground shakes beneath them. Suddenly, the comfort of predictability is ripped away. They start questioning the very foundation of what they thought they had. And silence becomes the most brutal mirror, reflecting their fears, their insecurities, their dependence. What you need to understand is that silence forces confrontation. It strips away illusion. She can hide behind the idea that you always reach out, always fix things, always show up. Silence throws her back into her own thoughts, her own doubts, her own insecurities. That's why it's so haunting. Because instead of you reassuring her, instead of you filling the void, she is left to fill it with her own fears. And fears multiply in silence faster than they ever could in conversation. Think about what silence really does. It denies instant gratification. It denies closure. It denies control. And that denial is powerful. People want to feel that they can summon your attention at will. They want to know you always just one text away, one call away, one message away. When that expectation collapses, it creates chaos. And chaos isn't comfortable, it's consuming. The harsh truth most refuse to accept is that silence communicates dominance. It shows that you are not ruled by impulse. It proves that you are not desperate for validation. It declares that you value your energy enough to withhold it. And whether she admits it or not, that silence makes her reevaluate her position in your life. Because the one who does chase is always the one who controls. You might not realize how deeply this affects her. That silence creates questions she can't answer. Did you lose interest? Did she say something wrong? Did something change? She'll replay moments in her head, dissect conversations, look for clues. She will search for the trigger that caused you to go quiet. And in doing so, she gives you power without you lifting a finger. That's the haunting reality. Silence makes her do the chasing in her own mind before she even acts on it. But here's the brutal part. Silence also exposes the truth. If your absence makes no impact, if your silence does haunt, it means she was never invested to begin with. It reveals her level of care, her level of attachment, her level of dependence. Silence is the filter that separates the ones who value you from the ones who only entertained you. It's the test that words could never conduct. Most men fear this. They fear that silence will push someone away. They fear being forgotten. They fear being replaced. But the opposite is true. Constant chasing, constant texting, constant calling, those are the things that push you into the category of too easy. They rob you of mystery, of strength, of value. Silence, on the other hand, restores those things. It shows that you are not desperate for attention, that you are not clinging for validation, that you can exist without proving your worth every second of the day. So when your phone stays cold, when your words don't come, when your silence fills the space, understand the truth of what is happening. You are not just ignoring, you are not just stepping back. You are shifting the balance of power. You are forcing her to confront the reality that your presence is not guaranteed. And that realization is haunting because it is rare, because in a world where everyone is quick to respond, desperate to be noticed, and addicted to noise, silence is a shock to the system. And the one who dares to hold it owns the control. Here, as the harsh truth most people never want to face. Attention is a drug. The moment it stops flowing, the withdrawal begins. Every text you did send, every call you did make, becomes a dose withheld. And withdrawal doesn't just sting, it consumes. It makes the other person restless, uneasy, desperate to restore the high they were getting from your presence. Silence is the denial of that drug. Silence is the cold turkey moment that rattles them to their core. What you need to understand is this. Attention creates dependency. When you give it freely, when you make yourself constantly available, when your phone is always buzzing with words and reassurance, you condition someone to expect it. They don't just enjoy it, they need it. And the more they get it, the less they value it. But the second you stop giving it, the moment the steady flow disappears, it turns into a craving they can't ignore. That craving turns into obsession. And obsession is born not from what they receive but from what they suddenly lose. Silence, then, is not emptiness. It is pressure. The kind of pressure that squeezes the mind and forces it to look inward. She will question herself in ways she never did before. Did she say the wrong thing? Did she misstep? Did she lose her grip on your interest? And those questions don't fade. After 5 minutes they linger, they repeat, they echo louder with every hour of silence. You don't have to remind her of your value. Your silence makes her remind herself. Here is the part most people want to admit. Words can be dismissed, but silence cannot. A text can be read and shrugged off. A call can be answered with indifference. But silence sits in the background like a shadow that doesn't leave. It's not something she can scroll past or swipe away. It is not a moment, it's a void that expands. Every glance at her phone, every second she does hear from you, only makes the silence louder. That is why it haunts her. Not because of what you did, but because of what you did to do. And here's where it gets brutal. Silence does to just test her, exposes you. If you can handle holding it, if you can endure the quiet without rushing to fill it, it means you are weak. It means you are addicted to giving away your power. But if you can sit in it, if you can let it stretch, if you can watch as the questions swirl in her mind while you remain steady, then you've mastered control. Silence becomes your weapon, your shield, your greatest leverage. The shocking realization is this: attention has never been the measure of love. It's been the measure of dependence. And when you cut it off, when you let silence take its place, you see who truly values you. If she runs, if she collapses, if she panics under the weight of your silence, it reveals how deeply she relied on you. If she stays strong, unaffected, unshaken, it reveals the truth too. Silence always brings answers that words try to hide. This is what makes silence powerful. It doesn't just haunt her because she misses the sound of your voice or the sight of your message. It haunts her because it removes certainty. Certainty is the comfort zone. Certainty is knowing she has you at her fingertips. But silence strips that away. Silence makes her face the terrifying thought, maybe she does tea. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you've lost interest. Maybe she's not as important as she thought. That thought alone is enough to unravel even the strongest facade of confidence. And while she wrestles with those thoughts, you don't have to lift a finger. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You don't have to prove anything. Your silence does all the work. It places the weight on her shoulders. It makes her chase answers you haven't given. It makes her replay conversations you for long forgotten. It makes her crave the very thing you are, withholding your presence, your words, your attention. So let this sink in. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the most powerful form of it. It doesn't just leave her wondering. It makes her feel the gravity of losing access to you. And once someone has felt that kind of silence, they never forget it. Because silence does fade, it haunts. You've been told your whole life that love is proven through constant effort, constant reassurance, constant presence. They say you need to text first, call often, check in, and keep reminding her of how much she means to you. That's the script everyone follows, the script of desperation disguised as devotion. And yet, that very script is the reason so many lose respect, lose attraction, and lose themselves. Because here, as the truth most can't handle, the more you prove yourself. With endless words and non-stop attention, the cheaper you become. Silence, on the other hand, is priceless. It restraint. It's discipline. It's power contained rather than power scattered. While constant calling and texting feels like security, what it really shows is weakness and inability to exist without her response. But when you choose silence, you are making a declaration. You are not at her mercy. You are not controlled by the need for validation. You are not running after scraps of her time or affection. Instead, you are forcing her to chase something she can no longer predict. This is what most men refuse to accept. They think silence means losing. They think distance means disinterest. They think pulling back means the end. But the reality is far harsher. Silence creates desire. It's not the words you flood her with that keep her hooked. It's the mystery of what you don't say. Scarcity is what creates value, and silence is the highest form of scarcity. Anyone can text a dozen times a day. Anyone can call until their voice goes hoarse. But not everyone can hold their ground in silence and let the absent speak. That what separates the desperate from the disciplined. Here is the raw truth. If you are always available, always accessible, always ready to drop everything, you are not a priority, you are an option. You've made yourself predictable, ordinary, replaceable. And predictability kills attraction. But when you step back, when you let the phone stay dark, when you allow silence to do the talking, something shifts. She feels the gap. She notices the absence. She realizes that the energy she took for granted is no longer guaranteed. And that realization cuts deeper than any speech about self-respect ever could. Silence is not about ignoring. It's not about games. It is about recalibration. It is about resetting the balance. It's about showing without a single word that you are not built to beg. You are not a servant to her whims. You are not going to bleed out your energy just to keep her comfortable. Your silence reminds her that your attention is a gift, not a given. And the second she feels the weight of that truth, the power dynamic shifts back to you. Think of it this way. Constant communication floods her with comfort. Comfort breeds entitlement. Entitlement erases respect. But silence removes comfort. It replaces certainty with doubt. And doubt sparks desire. When she does know if you'll call, if you'll text, If you'll reach out, she starts to think about you more, not less. She begins to crave the very thing she once dismissed, and suddenly, she is the one questioning herself, not you. That is the haunting effect of silence. It flips the script without you lifting a finger. Here is the brutal reality. If you can't control your impulse to reach out, you will never control the frame of the relationship, because the one who can sit in silence, the one who can resist, filling every void with words, is the one who ends up powerless. Discipline is not texting when you feel the urge. Strength is not explaining yourself when you feel misunderstood. Power is in restraint, in holding back, in letting the silence stretch until it works in your favor. That's how respect is earned. That's how desire is reignited. That's how balance is restored. So understand this. Silence is not punishment. It's not cruelty. It is not abandonment. It's the highest form of respect for yourself. It's proof that you value your energy more than you value her comfort. It's the statement that you will not devalue yourself by chasing what should be freely given. And in that silence, she sees something she can't ignore. You are not desperate. You are not ordinary. You are not like the rest. Silence is weakness. Silence is strength, discipline, and power wrapped into one. And when you learn to use it, you stop running after her attention and start making her chase the echo of your absence. That echo will haunt her more than 1,000 texts ever could understand. This clearly, people don't crave what is always available. They crave what they can't predict. Certainty is comfortable, but it also boring. Predictability kills attraction faster than rejection ever could. If she knows you, always text, always call, always show up the moment she snaps her fingers, then you've turned yourself into background noise. You are not exciting, you are not rare, you are not valuable. You are simply, they're like the air, she breathes, unnoticed until it's gone. But when you step back, when your voice is no longer constant, when your presence becomes scarce, everything changes. Suddenly, the silence hits, suddenly the absence is felt. And in that gap, desire is born. You are no longer the predictable man who always chases. You've become the mystery she can't solve, the void she can't fill, the question she can't silence. And questions are powerful. They keep her awake. They force her to wonder. They make her want answers only you can provide. The mistake most people make is believing that more attention equals more love. They think if they flood her with words, if they drown her in message, if they show up every second, she will appreciate them more. But reality doesn't work that way. Reality is brutal. The more you give, the less it is valued. The more predictable you are, the less you are desired. Scarcity is what fuels demand, and silence is the purest form of scarcity. You don't have to play games. You don't have to act fake. You don't have to disappear completely, but you do have to stop handing out your time and energy like they were worthless, because every time you answer immediately, every time you over-explain, every time you chase, you lower your price. You make yourself ordinary, and ordinary is invisible. Extraordinary is scarce. Silence makes you extraordinary because it shows restraint in a world obsessed with noise. Here's the harsh reality. Attention is cheap. Anyone can give it. Anyone can send a good morning text. Anyone can call 10 times a day. But value is rare. And value is created when you show you can withhold what everyone else gives freely. Silence is the currency of value. It's not about ignoring it. It's about reminding her that your energy is not guaranteed. Reminding her that your attention is a privilege, not a right. Reminding her that your presence is earned, not demanded. And when that realization hits, it shifts the balance of power. She begins to replay everything. She wonders why you were quiet. She asks herself if she lost her grip. She thinks about you more, not less, because the silence forces her to confront the space you've left behind. And the more she thinks, the more the silence grows. The paradox, silence does fade with time. It expands, it multiplies, it echoes. Stop being afraid of pulling back. Weak men fear distance. They fear losing her attention. They fear being forgotten, so they overcompensate. They text too much, call too much, give too much. And in doing so, they destroy the very attraction they were desperate to keep. Strong men understand the opposite. Distance creates desire. Silence sharpens interest. Absence builds value. If she can predict you, she can't ignore you. Think about it. What haunts someone more? The words they already heard 100 times, or the silence that leaves them with 100 questions. Predictable men become disposable. Mysterious men become unforgettable. The difference is, in what they say it, in what they choose not to say. So remember this. If you are always there, always chasing, always proving, you are not building connection, you are destroying it. You are suffocating it. You are making yourself forgettable. But when you vanish into silence, you become impossible to ignore. You become the gap she feels, the void she can't fill, the echo she keeps hearing long after the conversation ends. Scarcity creates value. Silence creates scarcity. And when you master that, you stop being an option and start being the prize. This isn't a game. This isn't manipulation. This is survival. Self-respect. Because if you can, control the urge to text, to call, to prove your worth over and over again, then you already lost. You've traded your value for validation. You've handed away your power to the very person you are desperate to keep. That is not love. That is weakness. And weakness never earns respect. Every time you overreach, every time you over-explain, every time you flood her with your presence, you re-sending one brutal message. My worth is not enough on its own, so I have to prove it constantly. And that's exactly why she stops valuing you. Nobody treasures what they don't have to earn. Nobody respects what always kneeling at their feet. The moment you start begging through words, you stop being seen as strong, desirable, or rare. You become predictable, disposable, ordinary. But silence flips the script. Silence is restraint. Silence is discipline. Silence is the refusal to let insecurity dictate your action. When you stay quiet, you are not running, you are not avoiding, you are not losing, you standing firm. You are letting your absence do what your words could never do. You forcing her to feel what life looks like without you constantly filling the silence for her. And that absence screams louder than any text you could send. Here, as the truth most can, stomach, silence is power. Not because it manipulates, but because it shows control. It shows that you are not desperate. It shows that you don't need constant validation to feel alive. It shows that your self-worth does depend on her response. That level of control is rare, and rarity is valuable. You don't earn respect by chasing. You earn it by showing you can walk away from the chase and still stand tall. But you all hear people call silence toxic. They all say it as unfair. They all say it as cruel. Why? Because it works. Because it exposes the fragile foundation of most connections. Because it strips away comfort and replaces it with fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of being ignored. Fear of realizing you are not controlled by their approval. And that fear is what makes silence unforgettable. The weak will break silence because they can handle discomfort. They'll tell themselves, just one text, one hurt. They'll convince themselves that reaching out shows care. But care given out of fear is as desperation. And desperation kills attraction instantly. The strong, however, embrace the silence. They let it burn. They let it stretch. They let the other person sit in the void, knowing that the longer it lasts, the louder the silence becomes. Silence is not about punishing her, it is about protecting yourself. It about refusing to keep pouring into someone who does pour back. It about refusing to prove your worth when your worth should be undeniable. It is about drawing a line that says my energy is mine and I decide who gets it. That's not cruelty, that is self-respect at its highest form. Here is the brutal truth. If you can stop yourself from overtexting, from overcalling, from overchasing, then you'll never be respected. You'll never be valued. You'll never be seen as rare. You always be seen as replaceable. Silence is the cure to that disease. It's the reset button. It's the reminder that you are not desperate, you are not weak, and you are not controlled by the need to prove your existence through constant attention. So let silence do the talk. Let it show her what life feels like when you're not available on demand. Let it force her to confront the possibility of losing you, because that fear, that haunting thought, is far more powerful than any reassurance you could ever give. In silence, you don't lose, you regain respect. You regain control, you regain your value. And once you understand that, you'll never beg for attention again here. It's the shocking truth most people ignore. Silence is louder than words. Silence does, whisper it roars. It doesn't fade, with time it grows. Every second that passes without a reply, without a call, without acknowledgement, becomes fuel for the mind. And the mind is relentless. It fills in the blanks with fears, doubts, and insecurity. That's why silence haunts. It forces someone to face themselves in ways your words never could. When you speak, when you explain, when you defend, she has something to hold on to. She can dismiss it, argue with it, twist it, or ignore it. But when you say nothing, there's nothing to dismiss, nothing to twist, nothing to push back against, just emptiness. And emptiness is unbearable. That's what makes silence more powerful than any speech. It cannot be controlled. Here's the brutal part. Silence is never neutral. It either builds your power or destroys it. If you break silence too soon, if you fill the void with desperate words, you kill its effect. You prove that you could handle the weight of your own stillness. But if you hold it, if you let it expand, if you sit in it with calm strength, silence turns into leverage. It forces her to feel the gap. It forces her to realize how much she depends on your presence. Think about it. Words can be forgotten. Arguments fade, promises are broken, but silence sticks. Silence lingers long after the moment ends. It does disappear. It follows her into the night, into her thoughts, into every glance at her phone. It makes her wonder why you haven't spoken, what you are thinking, what you are doing. And that wondering becomes obsession, because the human mind cannot stand unanswered questions. That's why silence cuts deeper than rejection. Rejection gives closure. It hurts, but it ends. Silence gives no closure. It leaves the wound open, raw, exposed. It doesn't heal, it festers. And the more she tries to escape it, the more it pulls her back in. Silence is the question mark that never leaves. Most people don't realize this, because they were addicted to noise. They believe if they are not speaking, not texting, not calling, they are losing. But the opposite is true. When you can withhold, when you can resist the urge to fill every gap, you win. You win because silence makes her do the work. She replays the conversations. She analyzes every detail. She creates stories in her head to explain your absence. And in doing so, she gives you power without you lifting a finger. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. Silence reveals more than words ever could. It reveals how much she values you. It reveals how strong or fragile her confidence really is. It reveals whether she truly cares, or whether she only enjoyed your constant availability. Silence is the test most people avoid, because they are too scared of the answer. But it's the only test that gives you the truth. And here's where it gets even harsher. Silence is unforgettable. She might forget the compliments you gave, the calls you made, even the arguments you had. But she will never forget the moment you stopped speaking. She will never forget the stretch of days where her phone stayed empty. She will never forget how it felt when the attention she counted on vanished without warning. That's the kind of memory that burns itself in deep. So understand this. Silence is not absence. It is presence magnified. It is the invisible hand that pulls her back to you even when you nowhere near. It is the weight she feels when you don't reach out. It is the echo that follows her around when the conversation never comes. And that echo does fade. It grows. That's why silence is not weakness. It is not cowardice. It is not avoidance. It is the ultimate demonstration of power. Because when you choose silence, you are not just holding back words, you are forcing her to sit in the storm of her own mind. And nothing is more haunting than that. Stop being afraid of silence. That fear is what keeps most men weak. They panic the moment the conversation dies. They rush to fill the gap with emojis, with meaningless texts, with long explanations that only reveal their insecurity. They think silence means they are losing her. They think silence means she's slipping away. But the truth is far harsher. Silence is not what makes you lose it. It's what makes you win, if you know how to hold it. Weak men crumble in silence. They suffocate without constant feedback. They need to know where they stand at every moment, so they smother her with attention, thinking it proves their worth. But it does. It proves desperation. It proves lack of control. It proves that they can handle stillness, that they can stand in their own value without external reassurance. And nothing kills respect faster than desperation. Strong men, on the other hand, sit comfortably in silence. They don't flinch when the phone doesn't buzz. They don't break when there's no message waiting. They don't scramble to keep the conversation alive at all costs. They know the power of restraint. They understand that silence is not emptiness, it is leverage. They let the quiet stretch, because they know silence will work harder than words ever could. Here is the brutal truth. Silence is the ultimate scarcity. And scarcity creates value. If you're always talking, always texting, always available, there's nothing rare about you. You're ordinary. But when you embrace silence, when you know how to hold it without fear, you become unpredictable. You become scarce. And scarcity is magnetic. It pulls her in, because people chase what they can't easily have. Think about the world you live in. It's drowning in noise. Everyone is posting, calling, messaging, shouting for attention. Everyone is desperate to be seen, desperate to be noticed, desperate to stay relevant. Silence is rare. Silence is different. Silence stands out. And the one who can hold silence becomes unforgettable. You want to know what really haunts her. It's not your compliments. It's not your promises. It's not the endless string of texts you sent to prove your interest. What haunts her is the silence you create when you stop feeding her the certainty she's grown addicted to. It's the quiet that makes her replay everything she said, everything she did, wondering if she lost something valuable. It's the emptiness that makes her crave the presence she once took for granted. That craving is born in silence, not in noise. Here's what most won't tell you silence does. To make you vanish, it makes you present in her mind. The less you say, the more she thinks. The less you give, the more she craves. The less you chase, the more she feels the absence. Weak men can grasp this. They think silence equals invisibility, but the opposite is true. Silence makes you larger, heavier, harder to ignore. Silence plants you in her thoughts where words never could. And this is where self-discipline separates you from the rest. Can you resist the urge to break the silence just to soothe your own insecurity? Can you sit in the discomfort long enough to let it work for you? Most can't. They sabotage themselves. They hand back the power because they can't handle the tension. But the ones who master silence never need to beg, never need to chase, never need to prove. They let silence prove it for them. Understand this. Silence is to weakness. Silence is strength. Silence isn't to neglect. Silence is value. Silence isn't to avoidance. Silence is control. And if you don't learn to embrace it, you will stay stuck in the cycle of over-giving, over-texting, over-chasing, only to end up ignored and disrespected. But if you can master silence, if you can sit in it without fear, then you don't lose anything, you gain everything. Because silence will haunt her long after your words would have been forgotten.